Welcome back to our special Sukkot episode of Holy Land Uncovered, and I'm very pleased to be joined now by Eitan Cooper, the Executive Vice President of Jerusalem's Schechter Institute. Hello, and Hag Sameach to you.
Hag Sameach. Pleased to be here with you this morning.
It is finally to be here, to be part of the holiday of Sukkot, which every year we all look forward to. It's an experience of endless light and energy. We've had a very challenging year here in Israel. So explain from your perspective the meaning of Sukkot and why this year maybe we could get some extra energy than years past.
I think that standing here in Jerusalem, opposite Mount Zion, it gives me a sense of the experience of ancient Israel and the farmer, the simple farmer. The Torah speaks in a multiplicity of voices, and it is able through one holiday to convey so many messages, so that Sukkot is mentioned 5 or 6 times in the Torah, but it takes on a very different context each time. Mm-hmm. In the book of Shemot, in Exodus, you have the holiday being called Chag HaAsif, Tkufat HaShana. This is the holiday of the ingathering. After you've gathered in everything, you celebrate, and Tkufat HaShana, it's really the completion of the cycle of pilgrimage holidays.
Wow.
And that's how it's described. It's starting with Pesach, continuing with Shavuot, and now we come to Sukkot at the end of the year, and it's just before the rains and before the rainy season, and that's what gives it its annual agricultural impact. Mm-hmm. Because in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, in the Talmud, it says that we're judged on Sukkot for the rains in the coming year. So it's a very powerful experience for that farmer. At the same time, there are customs or mitzvot associated very much with the holiday. The 3 of them really, in ancient times, of course, there was the Korban, the sacrifice, and then there's also the Sukkot, the idea of Sukkah, of sitting in the Sukkah for 7 days. And there's also the bringing together of the 4 species. And these are the 3 main customs associated with the holiday. And those are found in the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, mm-hmm. and in Numbers.
Okay.
And they're described to themselves. They're not associated, say, with the pilgrimage itself. It says, right. This is what you're going to do. This is how you do the customs. And then in Dvarim, there's another message, and the message is come to the place where that God's chosen, and meaning Jerusalem later on, and here you're going to celebrate. And not only are you going to celebrate, there's a message of inclusion. And the 2 times it's mentioned in Sukkot is mentioned in Dvarim, in Deuteronomy. You have the first time it mentions the stranger at your gates. That person is celebrating with you as well. And the second time, it's the Hakel. At the end of the sabbatical year, everyone gathers for Sukkot and reads Torah. The men, the women, the children, the stranger, everyone together is commanded to celebrate this holiday together. Mm-hmm. So there's a very strong message of inclusion.
Right. All
of Am Yisrael. If you ask for a message, that's one message for today. The message of really everyone has a message. Everyone's tefillah is heard. Everyone has to empower themselves with their Judaism in the way they understand it, to hear Torah and to hear the many voices in Torah. Mm-hmm. One last point, this multiplicity of voices is also a multiplicity of messages. So for example, you have the message of the annual cycle. You do the mitzvot, you do the pilgrimage, and God will reward you with rains in their season and bountiful harvest. That's the first message, but that's only one message. Then we have a historical message linking every holiday to going out of Egypt and the receiving of Torah. Going out of Egypt, of course, is Pesach and the parting of the Red Sea, and then receiving Torah 7 weeks later on Shavuot, and finally the experience of the desert itself. And even the holiday, and even the customs are very tied to that. Sitting in booths, Sukkot, is not something you do when the rains are coming. You go home. But we're told to sit in booths like you do in the fields during the summer, or as a reminder of our experience in the desert. We lived in Sukkot. We lived in houses made out of
that
or
was
huts.
the first time historically that the sukkahs were established was in Sinai during the
Sinai.
Exodus,
And
during
even today,
exile
today, you'll find these kinds of structures among the Bedouins, particularly at this time of year in southern Sinai. So, that's a second message. It's a historical message. It's not just binding us to the land; it's binding us to our history.
Right.
And the third message, maybe the most succinct, is that message of inclusion. This holiday is for everyone. And I suppose if you look at the custom of ushpizin today, of receiving guests on Sukkot, every Jewish holiday is imbued with a social message. And that message is one of, this is a holiday for everyone. It's one of inclusion. And it's one of hospitality. And it's one of tzedakah, of charity, and of gemilut chesed. And that's the third voice that you're hearing in Torah. And of course, the sages took a lot of these messages and they adapted them to life outside of Israel and things, and they found new messages that were more appropriate to a different environment.
Right. Before we wrap, tell us quickly, because I know the Schechter Institute does a lot of very inspirational work in Ukraine that started even before the war. So explain what your rabbi, the female rabbi who is based there, is going to be doing for Sukkot with those in Ukraine right now.
Just one word on the Institute.
Yeah.
We're an academic institution. We are a graduate school. We also have a Beit Midrash, where people learn religious studies and study for the conservative, the Masorti rabbinate. And we also have a center in Tel Aviv that's more culturally. It's a I would call it a contemporary Jewish cultural center. And we also have the Tali programs in schools, where we work in hundreds of Israeli schools and kindergartens. Again, all with the idea of empowering people's Jewish identity, with knowledge of Judaism, of tradition, and so forth. Now, about 30 years ago, after the fall of the Soviet Union, some of our rabbis and rabbinical students went to Ukraine and Russia to kind of seek out what's going on there and see if there's what we could contribute to reviving Jewish identity and among the Jews there who had lost so much, both in the Shoah and under communism. And we founded schools and a camp Ramah, which operates to this day in Ukraine. And now there are communities which are founded by graduates of our schools in the camp. And they were in, pre-war, they were in Kharkiv in the north, which really suffered in the war. Kiev, Odessa, Chernivtsi. Chernivtsi in southwest Ukraine is far from the front, and it became a refugee, a refugee center, where people passing through to Romania stopped, Jews and non-Jews, and they were fed in our center, which became a soup kitchen. And some people stayed there, and we helped them to settle there. And so we've been running an emergency program for all our communities in Ukraine, and we've managed to run Camp Ramah for the kids, some of whom are coming from cities which are bombarded. And we've managed to run it again in that area where it's quiet 2 summers in a row, which is a miracle. And right now, Rabbi Irina Gritsevskaya, who's the director of Midreshet Schechter, the NPO that runs the programs in Ukraine, is there. She just led Yom Kippur services in Chernivtsi, and she's right now today on her way to Kiev to build a sukkah with the community at our center in Kiev. So it's an amazing thing. So we're very busy here in Israel, but we're also busy outside of Israel with Jewish communities as well.
Eitan Cooper, thank you very much for your time and sharing all of the fantastic work the Schechter Institute is doing.